one of the gifts that I have is attention to detail, right? And so paying attention to what bothers me, paying attention to what kind of gets me excited, and teaching our kids to do the same thing. What is it that gets you excited? What is it that gets on your nerve? We talked about pet peeves this week in morning meeting. And paying attention, being self-aware enough to start building on those things.
It's the Empowerment Perspective Podcast, hosted by Demiso Josie and Mr. Kareem Spence. Stay empowered.
All right, welcome to yet another episode of the Empowerment Perspective Podcast. I go by the name of Dr. Demiso A. Josie alongside
Spence is here.
And
Amy.
What's happening, guys? We're back at it again. Still in quarantine, obviously, with everyone. Hopefully Kareem has calmed down and, hopefully he's in a better space. I thought we was going to lose him there for a second, but I think we found something that kind of distracted him. My understanding is we're putting this big program together eventually, and a couple of fundraisers, especially when we get done on the back end of this thing too, involving a little bit of competition. And I know Mr. Petty had went to the store. He had some problems, I think last night or night before, trying to purchase this gaming system. So Mr. Chris, can you enlighten us?
Well, here's when you realize that there are not only just petty people in the world, but there are actually like petty corporations and petty stores. So I'll put them on blast. About 2 days ago, came up with the idea and we talked about, possibly doing a Madden tournament. And, I used to be like a Madden god, winning tournaments, got rings, paid for a whole trip, go to Jamaica, and I go to GameStop. Right? It's got a big sign on the store saying you can't buy nothing. You gotta go online. Go online, try to get the game, whole hour just waiting. They sold me the game and everything. Then they sent me an email saying they got a cancel order. So now I'm saying to myself that this is really petty. Call Jamie, hey, listen, need a game. So she called around. She found me one in Atlantic City. I'm like, I'm not going into the midst of the quarantine zone just to buy a PS4. We're not doing that. So she finds one over at Walmart. Meanwhile, I'm already in Walmart, and I go online at the same time, and I buy just a video game of Madden 20. A couple minutes later, petty company sent me an email saying they canceled my order. I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. It was like almost 2 hours. So when I get home, I got to wait another hour and a half just to play the game because now you got to log on. You got to give them all kind of personal information. I don't remember like a time where as though you just couldn't sit down and play the game. I have no idea how the kids do this nowadays. I remember that you used to be able to take the game, blow in the cartridge, and then you slide it right in and then you ball it.
So the reason why we're bringing this up is that we're going to have a couple of fundraisers with Madden tournaments. Obviously, they're kids there are at home and they kind of need some downtime. So why not, do it with a purpose? There'll be an entry fee. We'll raise money for families that are obviously in need. We're going to have a Madden tournament. We'll probably have a 2K tournament. Those of you following Pound Perspective Group, we have a big Christmas fundraiser and Thanksgiving fundraiser. But now, obviously, we're in a time of crisis. So we're here to try to help and do whatever we can. So we joke about the Madden thing, but we're going to put that in the works so we can have a little bit of fun and raise some money as well. I guess I got to dust my sticks off a little bit, try to get back in there, but that's definitely coming. On the previous podcast we talked specifically about hip hop and the importance of hip hop. As those of you who follow us know that one of our presentations is how to reach into today's hip hop generation. So we talk about how to bring the hip hop culture into the classroom so that those kids can identify with their culture and, see their culture celebrated within the lessons and things of that nature as a tool of engagement. So it was only right for us to do a podcast about hip hop. I'll start with you, Jamie. How did you feel at that particular podcast?
I think it went really well. I think it's important to listen to your students, find out what's interesting to them, because once you go into their world, you've engaged them and you've opened up, whatever it is that you're trying to teach them, they're going to hold on to it so much faster.
Got you. Kareem, how did you feel about that podcast?
I mean, it was enlightening. I mean, that was the first time we actually had someone on that actually was a label owner And we got a chance just to be able to listen to him speak, from the business side of hip hop. So often we focus on the creativity and the culture, but there's an actual business side of it that a lot of times loses like a lot of importance, because like when it comes to education, you have to know how to conduct business. And I think that's what we're teaching our kids in order to be able to be in the room. So like I said on the podcast, you may not use algebra today, because I know I didn't use it. I didn't use it last night. I didn't use it 3 weeks ago, but it puts you in the room with other people that may be using it for their own benefit.
Right. And from a business standpoint, and we've been preaching this probably for the last 4 years, is that those of you who want to get into business, there's two sides of it, right? There's the content side of it and then the actual business side. You have to be able to speak both languages. Unfortunately, a lot of people go in businesses in love with the content side until they figure out, the business side is a little rough. I got to, re-up and study about a lot of different things I didn't know about, whether it's taxes, marketing, strategy. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's a whole other podcast that we could talk about. But we also are talking about using this time wisely. So those of you who have aspirations of opening up your business, now's the time to start learning about the content, the business side as well as the content side too. So and start practicing and using this time wisely. Speaking of using the time wisely, as I always say, digging into the network. And I don't even know how we even got connected. I believe it was through a relative of mine, and kind of she was like, somebody has this book out. I think you want to look at the book because she's doing some wonderful things down south. And I was like, all right, well, let me see and follow. And I started following her. And then I guess we were kind of checking each other out behind the scenes in terms of our messaging and things that we were doing. And then she had a live, I wouldn't say a podcast, but it was a live message the other day that I decided to hop in. And I was like, she was talking about some of the same stuff that we are talking about here at the Empowerment Perspective Group. But a little bit different angle that she was coming in with. But I said, you know what? Let's see if she's willing to come on this podcast with us and chop it up with us about things that she has going on down in New Orleans and down in the South. And she's an educator. She's a podcaster. She's a speaker, author. I'm probably missing 5,000 other titles that I could probably put on there as well. But Arienna, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me, Demiso. I appreciate it.
Thank you for joining us. We obviously, our goal here is to enlighten people with some messages. In our particular message, this particular podcast, we talk about living in your gift, and ultimately that's what we want to get within this particular podcast. But just to give people a little bit more of a background for you, you are an educator, correct?
I am. I've been an educator for about 19 years now.
Okay. So we always start, and we're big on the why people get into do things that they do. So why did you get into education in the first place?
Wow, that's a good question. 2 reasons. My mom and my 4th grade teacher. My mom was a paraeducator or a teacher's assistant for about 23 years. And she valued education. And it's not that she said it with her words, but she said it with her actions. Growing up in New Orleans, I'm number 8 of 8 kids. And mom, I could tell she valued education because we didn't have a lot of money, but she would make sure that we walked to the library to check out books. And then we would write reports for her. And she showed up to our award ceremonies, and she came to teachers' conferences, and she checked to see if we had done our homework. So I knew from her that education was paramount. It was important. And so it started there, just with developing that love for learning. And it carried into my 4th grade classroom. The first day I walked into the classroom, Miss Flora Weber, the late Miss Flora Weber, she wrote her phone number on the board. And that was, in that time, I know it may not be a big deal now, but, because we all see our teachers and people that we admire on social media and things like that. But at that time, we didn't have social media. We didn't have cell phones. And for a teacher to step into that vulnerability of giving out her phone number to a classroom full of 4th graders who she knew was going to play on her phone, she wrote her number anyway. And she introduced herself, and she said, whenever you need me, this is my number. Just give me a call. And from that moment on, I knew that I wanted to have that same impact on other kids. And that was the going from the love of learning to actually embracing the passion for teaching and reaching young people.
Gotcha. The one thing that you said that kind of struck with me, and I started thinking, because it seems like, my mother, my grandmother, the older generation always expressed that, the love for education. And they always kind of pushed it.
Yes.
But this current generation, I'm not necessarily seeing that same push right now for some reason. I'm just going to throw this out to anyone. Why do you think that generation was, so pushing education as paramount versus what we are seeing today? Actually, I'll start with you, Kareem.
Well, that's the thing. So when we're looking at the previous generation, so we're actually looking at parents that was probably born around the 40s, 50s, and maybe even the 60s. So for them and what they had to go through as far as like Brown v. education and seeing how the opportunities were limited for people of color. So for them, that became a huge push to make sure that their children had the opportunity to have, an equal equal education. And I think that's what was the mainstay. And people knew back then that education was the great equalizer. So regardless of the economic background, regardless of Jim Crow, regardless of any other barrier that people tried to throw in front of people of color, we always knew that education was the greatest equalizer. And the more you're able to obtain, the more opportunities you're going to have later on in life.
Got you. So Jamie, now you're in the classroom, and you've been there for multiple years. Do you see a difference in the value of education versus, let's say, what your parents have instilled in you?
I do see a difference in the value of education. I don't know if it's parents not wanting their children to learn. I just think that we live in a society today where moms have to work, dads have to work. There's a lot of single parents out there. So not everyone has someone home with them that's going to be able to sit down with them and make sure their work is done. It's a different lifestyle.
Got you. Now, Arienna, are you seeing the same thing?
I am. I see it from both angles. I see it from Kareem's perspective. I also see it from Jamie's perspective. I do think that there is the generation of my mom's generation, which was, you're exactly right, 1941. My mom was born in 1941, so she was able to get a glimpse of what it was like to not have any other options in that sense, right? And I think that today we have what we consider so many other options, where at one point you had to have a degree, you had to have certain as far as academically, and now we're seeing you can become insta famous, those things. That has kind of crept in and clouded our judgment as it relates to the importance of education.
Got you. For me, I feel like that I'm paying homage to those who paved the way for me. Like, people died for me to have the right to be in education, right? So now I'm wondering, this next, like my kids and that following generation for me, what is there going to be their, I guess, draw to wanting to give back? Because I mean, it was a different time in the 50s and 60s, the Brown versus Board of Education, people dying and stuff like that. But this generation, I'm kind of almost struggling with, what legacy, I guess, are we leaving, the generation that's following. If anybody wants to speak on that, or maybe I'm going a little crazy, but I just see that there's not the same, obviously the same circumstances are not in existence now as they were back then, but I don't know. Like, I'm wondering if who are going to be the educational leaders that this next generation is going to be like, I want to be like Dr. Julie. I want to be like, all right, like, I don't, is that, I think it's, I guess. I think
it's happening to me. So I don't think we have, I think that there is hope. And just in the small circles like this, where we're having the conversations and we're making sure that we in our personal lives keep it in the forefront as far as making it important. And I know just personally, it's a challenge for me, because you talked about business and you talked about me being an educator, and it hasn't been an easy road, but I can look back and see the hundreds of families that I've been able to impact just of the one decision I made was to not settle for the status quo in education. So I think that we're all making those marks in our own personal communities, and it's going to catch on. So I'm very hopeful for that.
Yeah,
I mean, I see it when you have like one-on-one conversations with certain students. Their interest is to really to come back into the education realm and to help. So even though it may not be as politicized as it once was in the 50s and 60s and having the right to be able to attend school, the kids feel it. They feel the pushback. They even feel that they at times are not even wanted in the academic field. So they eventually going to have that internal drive that is going to be sparked by a teacher that is going to be, I don't know, negative towards them, not compassionate, rude, ignorant, disrespectful. So it's going to be them that's going to say that. So you know what, I'm going to go back and make sure that nobody has to be treated like that. So it's still going to be there.
Right. Now, in the previous podcast, we talked about the hip hop generation being a bunch of kids that kind of set the course for the culture, and their rebellion against the system and not having the necessary tools and stuff that everyone else had, and they kind of created something out of nothing. And I'm looking at this current generation, and these kids are speaking to me and saying that this current system of education, of public education, is not right for them. Right. Yeah. And they're saying that, I'm bored. I'm not, I don't want to go to school. They're telling us that this current situation and system is not right. Does this generation have that same rebellious nature, I guess you would say, would be able to take and rewrite education as we currently know it? Do we as educators give our young people enough power to do that? I guess it kind of relates to the hip hop culture, because we kind of gave them the space to do it. And you see that what happened when you let these kids have this voice. Do we as educators give these kids a voice and really listen to them and make the necessary changes? And the reason I'm asking this question, Arienna, because I think part of your story is you started in public education and was frustrated by it and then kind of went a different direction. So I'm going to put it in the context of these kids today, and are we really listening to them as adults? I guess in the long run.
Well, I'll say this. Right? In my own personal experience in school, I know that, and now people may not like this, but when a teacher was like popping me in my hand with them, like with the really thick rulers, that saved me from them having to call like the Division of Child Protective Services when I was touching people I shouldn't touch. So again, my story is that after we came in from playing lunch, she said, "Come on, hold your hand out." And it was like 5 of us. Hold your hand out. So she popped us with the rulers and said, "Now go ahead, see if you're going to touch her on the butt again. See if you do that again." So that ended all that. It wasn't
a Catholic school. It was a public school.
No, this is public school. This is second grade. And then I had, like, I don't know what kind of 4th grade teacher that Arienna had, but my 4th grade teacher threw like a stapler at me. Like he launched it. It was one of the big metal ones. But again, that was education, and it was teaching values, it was teaching character, it was allowing me to fail. Right now, we're stuck in a generation where everybody feels entitled. That if it's not going my way, then you need to fix it. If I can't get to this honors program, then I need to petition the teacher. I need to petition the board of education. Never mind the fact that you just may not be able to do the work, but no, I need to get in because I feel like I'm entitled to be there. And I think that's the difference between this generation and a generation that I came from, where a teacher was allowed to take you in the coat room and air you out if you wasn't acting right.
Say something before.
I definitely. I think to your question, are we giving them a voice? I've seen both sides of it. I've seen being in the public school system, seeing that side of it, and it is a challenge in the public school system to give them a voice, because we're so preoccupied with helping them to fit into the boxes that we've created, the standardized testing, and being concerned about us and our scores and making sure that we don't lose our jobs at the end of the year. So it becomes a little bit difficult when you're in the public school system or in the charter system or whatever it is, when there is a box that the kids have to be in. On my end, one of the reasons that I did what I did is because I wanted to make sure, I tell my parents, I want to help to develop independent thinkers, kids that are going to think for themselves. And it can be a challenge, but in the setting that I've been blessed to be able to be a part of, I'm able to give them more of a voice than I was able to when I was in the public school system. And so that's the beauty of kind of stepping out of that box and doing it on your own, is because that is one avenue. Not saying that those teachers in the public school system are not able to do so, but it gives you an avenue to be able to say, it doesn't matter. I don't have anybody looking over my head telling me what I have to do or what I cannot do with the students that I serve.
Now, Jamie, as a teacher in the public school system, do you feel like that your teaching is actually being hindered by the box that you're put in from a systematic perspective?
Absolutely, because we have a curriculum that we have to follow.
Yes.
There's a standardized test that students are going to be given at the end of the year. So as a teacher, you have to find the middle place where you can reach your students and also make sure you're covering everything that you need to in that pacing guide to prepare them for the test. So it kind of goes both ways. You have to do research every day to find the middle for your students.
All right, gotcha. Interesting. Now, Arienna, you talked about getting these kids to start thinking for themselves. And one of the messages that we kind of share with each other is we believe that everyone has a gift, right? Yeah. So how do we get people to recognize what their individual gift is? We can start with young people, then I want to shift over to adults, because I think there's two different approaches that we probably need to take with that. But I always have people come up to me like, well, how do I find my gift? Like, what is your answer to someone finding their gift?
If I had to choose the main thing, I think it would be self-awareness. Self-awareness, knowing and listening to what happens when, right? So when something's out of place, I know for instance, when I walk into the classroom, my students are like, Miss J, you always see what's wrong first, right? And I'm talking about if a chair is out of place, or if a student doesn't have on the uniform, or right. So I know that for me, one of the things that works for me, or one of the gifts that I have, is attention to detail, right? And so paying attention to what bothers me, paying attention to what kind of gets me excited, and teaching our kids to do the same thing. What is it that gets you excited? What is it that gets on your nerve? We talked about pet peeves this week in morning meeting, and paying attention, being self-aware enough to start building on those things. So I think that that's the first thing, is just helping our kids to become self-aware and to pay attention to their bodies and their reactions to things. If music just sends you to a whole nother level, there may be something in that you tap into to find your gift. So I think self-awareness.
Gotcha. One of the tools I try to tell parents, especially when you're talking to their kids, instead of asking your kid, how was school today? I always try to tell them to change the narrative and say, how did you feel when in gym class? Because kids learn based upon feeling, right? They'll be able to tell you how they felt throughout the course of the day. Yes. So to me, that's tapping into your self-awareness. Well, I felt bored in class. Then we can get into the why you felt bored. Yes. I think conversations will be a little bit more healthy when we start dealing with children's feelings, because when you're little, you don't learn that the stove is hot by someone telling you. Like, you touch it, you feel it, it's hot. Like, all right, you feel it. Yeah, so learn through feelings, and to be able to tap into that, I think is important. Now, Kareem, this is probably a little bit in your wheelhouse, being a counselor. How do we go about trying to instill it? Trying to help these kids find their gift and what their talent is.
I mean, even when you start, engaging them about feelings, you have to educate them on how, or the differences between certain feelings, because there's a difference between anger and there's a whole different difference between like rage. That's two different ball games. So you can be angry about something, but when you become raged or enraged, that becomes uncontrollable. Like, we tell our students and we tell certain adults that anger is a bad thing. To me, anger is not a bad thing. It's what you need to use. It's fuel to get stuff done. It's people there are complacent. People are just happy with status quo. Like, they don't have to be angry about nothing because they don't want anything to change. But if you want to change anything, then you have to use that anger in order to be able to get things done. So if we're looking to find out what your gift is, we have to figure out what you're passionate about. And like I piggyback what was said before, what actually bothers you? Like, you walk in the room and you see something wrong, what is it that you feel that's wrong and you can make right? So the gift in itself many times will find you. So rather it's going to be something you had to go through, rather it's going to be pain. Somehow, some way, the gift is actually going to find you. And then once you find it, now what happens is that now you have to start building the foundation so that you can be, I want to say, serious enough to be able to taste it. Because a lot of things that anger me, it may be good for one day, but after tomorrow, I'll get bored with it. But it has to be something that's truly passionate, that's connecting to you, and it's going to benefit your family.
I think we got to be careful too between the difference of doing what you want versus doing what you're gifted to do. Because you're looking at my career, I wanted to be in television, but it just didn't feel right for me. And I mean, I felt like a piece of machine. But when I volunteered, when I coached, mentored, and I started, I fought my gift for so long, so I realized that it just comes easy to me. It comes natural. I feel passionate about it, but it just comes easy to me. And then got to teaching. And then once you find your gift, it's about putting it in different vehicles, which we talk about all the time on here. And which the Empowerment Perspective Group is really all about, is getting people to live their gift in the different vehicles, and trying to find what vehicles comfortable, but don't limit yourself to this is only my lane. You know what I'm saying? And really broaden your horizon. Now, Arienna, I heard one of your speeches, and I think you talked specifically about putting your gift in different vehicles. Can you, expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. And I actually was speaking at an empowerment seminar, and I was talking about the switch from being in the public school system and hating waking up in the morning. Hating waking up, my face would break out. My husband would sometimes, he would be like, "What's wrong? Like, what is the problem?" And I absolutely hated it, but it did not match with the fact that I've wanted to teach since I was in 4th grade. So those two things were, they appeared to be polar opposites. What was going on? So I realized that I don't have to leave education. I can leave the public school system because I hate waking up, right? And that's that self-awareness. It wasn't that I hated teaching. It was that I hated feeling like a failure because I woke up every morning and I had kids who didn't know how to read, didn't know how to write, didn't know how to do math. And it was my job to teach them to pass a test in March. So I woke up every morning feeling like a failure, like I was failing my kids. So I hated getting up in the morning. But self-awareness helped me to see it's not that you don't enjoy teaching. It's not that you don't love your students. It's not that you don't enjoy being in a community with your colleagues, but you've got to find another vehicle. So that's why I decided, okay, but the public school system is not for me. And that's when I decided that I was going to start my own school.
Right. I don't want people to think really that you have to make a drastic change, because once I started listening to what you were saying, I had the same feeling in the previous school. Like I would sit in the parking lot, my stomach would be turned. I had a 45-minute commute, and I'm sitting there cursing all the way, going the way to really don't want to do this anymore. Like this is like every day. I would literally sit in my car and pray like for 10 minutes and like take deep breaths before I walked in the building. And I've realized that every situation, your gift isn't made for every situation, right? So that the culture and climate of that particular school, my gift wasn't fitting right in there. So it was time for me to make that move. And even though I basically went from the same setting, but the cultures were different. So my gift fits a little bit better within there. So at the same time, once you recognize what your gift is, don't waste it in a culture that's just not meant for your gift. I know a lot of people will stay in let's say the teaching profession because they are gifted with the gift of teaching, but that particular culture and climate may not be what's right for your gift. It might be right for others, but not right for yours. And I know I left my man Kareem. Actually, I left Jamie too. I left y'all a little bit behind. I couldn't do it anymore.
Still traumatized behind that.
I apologize for the bottom of my heart, but I just couldn't do it. So Jamie, do you feel like that you're living in your gift, or you do feel like this is what you were meant to do? I know it's a tough question.
So I've gotten past the point of worrying about my kids' test scores, and I teach special ed. So they are or they're not going to pass the standardized test. That can't be what fuels me every day to go into my classroom and teach. So at the end of the day, if they've learned whatever it was the lesson is. If they come back the next day and they ask if we can do something again or if we can watch something again, I know that I've reached my students, and that's what has to fuel me, not what a test score is going to be at the end of the year. I also can't go into my classroom and worry about what everyone else in the building is doing and if they're recognizing what I'm doing in my classroom, because I know that I'm reaching my students. They're at my door all the time. They're seeking me out in the hallway. I can't worry about everyone else.
But here I come, Mr. Administrator, with his clipboard. I'm ready to do your observation. And
Oh, yes.
I'm judging your teaching ability based upon this system, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you really, I guess, lack of a better word, really care what I'm writing on this clipboard? Because at the end of the day, it's more about what you see in your kids, or are you really passionate about this observation that I'm giving that I don't even believe myself?
Yeah.
Everybody wants a good observation, but again, what one person sees, another person may not, and vice versa. So just because you see it doesn't mean someone else is, and I can't let that guide me in regards to what I'm doing. If I know I'm a good teacher, then I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing.
Right, I hear you. Even on my end, I get observed too, and 9 times out of 10, I don't even read it. I just say I sign it. If you were to tell me what I'm doing, if I'm doing something really that bad, you've already told me. I'm not listening. That's my. I was like, whatever. It doesn't even matter to me. Kareem, how you take an observation based upon your feelings, your students?
Well, it's different for me and in a counselor role, because now I've established like a personal relationship with the student, and they trust me in the conversations that we have are supposed to remain private. Now you want to observe what we're talking about, and I have to bring a third party in to listen to some sensitive information that people are sharing. So for me, I don't even allow that to happen. I'll do a social skills group, something that the kids are not even going to realize that the other person is in the room. I try to protect their privacy. I try to protect their trust. But when we have, a standardized form to say that the conversations that I may or may not be having can be like beneficial, or it's hard to tell in education because we don't know what the end result is going to be for 15, 20 years. You don't know the conversation that you have today may change a person's course in 15 years. So to come in that for 30 minutes and say, well, you're doing a good job. Well, I may have said something to a kid because I have a tendency to do stuff like that the kid or somebody else may not like because they may not understand our relationship. I have the ability to say something to somebody. They'd be like, man, he doesn't get upset. No, he doesn't get upset. I'll tell the kid in a second, listen, man, you're petty. I'll tell him in a second, you're petty. And someone else may take it offensive, but sometimes when you're outside looking in, you may not understand the true dynamics of like rapport and personal relationships.
Right. And I think even from an observer's perspective, like I was never a guidance counselor, right? I know because my job requires me to know what guidance counselors do, but I don't know the deep details and how to really get kids to respond certain ways. I would do personally, but I really don't know intricate details. So how is an observer really going to be able to observe you accurately?
Not effective.
I really don't understand every little element to it. It's to me, it's crazy.
Here's what I like, right? I like when they bring me a kid that's crying, right? And it may take me, 2, maybe 3 hours to fix them, to be able to get them to go back. And they'll come past my office and say, they still here? Yeah, they still here, because it takes time. Like they don't like truly understand. It's not a knock on an administrator, but they don't understand like the intricacies of someone's like when they upset, it takes hours, and I can't put somebody back in the classroom, especially if they're going off and they're saying they're going to fight somebody. I can't put them back in that environment because they go back and they punch somebody in the face. Then they're looking at me like, well, why didn't you talk to them? I did, but they still wanted to punch them in the face.
Do it, yeah.
I mean, sometimes people need to get punched in the face. I will say that. Sometimes I'm telling you, listen, when I was in school, I reflect back on this whole like bullying thing. You knew exactly who to mess with and who not to. Like you didn't talk back to people that you knew you couldn't beat because you knew on the way home it's going to be a real big circle and you're going to get it handed to you. You don't talk back to people. You don't. But now it's like if somebody says something to you, you know, and I don't want to like downplay, you know, like bullying now because I know that it can be detrimental to the mental health. But reality is sometimes you need that. Like you need for people to give you negative comments because again, they may even push you to do something that you need to do.
True. This is true. I want to get into your transition a little bit, Arianna, in terms of going from public school to your I guess what you're doing now. Because I think a lot of people, when they do what you do and create businesses, they think it's all fun and games and it's sweet. I'm not going to have any problems, or I'll be able to handle the rough problems. I guess explain to us and the audience, like, how do you handle the setbacks? How do you handle the disappointments? How do you handle your vision not coming? You have a vision, but it may not be exactly what it is right now. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, I definitely. Oh, I understand. I understand clearly what you're saying. Leaving the public school system, and it's been we made 9 years in this past February. So about 9 years ago, leaving the public school system, all I had was my short-term vision. I didn't know what it was going to look like 9 years from 2011, and I had no clue. I had never run a brick and mortar business. We had done some real estate, that kind of thing, but I had never run a brick and mortar business. So this was all brand new to me. And I look back now and I'm like, wow, how did we even do it? I'm talking about something as simple as unemployment, somebody filing an unemployment claim, just something as simple. I'm gonna jump off just a little bit real quick. With this whole Corona thing, I got a letter, and somebody's filing for unemployment, but he hasn't worked for us for 5 years. And so in the beginning, I didn't even know that was a thing. So I would see the letters, but I would take too long to respond. I would, so it's those little things that snowball, the taxes, making sure you are properly deducting things and making sure things are, your accounting is in line. And especially now we're dealing with money from the state where some of our students come in with scholarships and things like that. So dealing with it is twofold. One is being patient with the process. Truly understanding that I am not going to know everything there is to know about running a school. So being patient with myself, but at the same time being willing to learn. So looking for the resources and being in every webinar I can be in and being in every meeting I can be in and talking to as many people that I can, put myself in rooms with people who have done it or who know somebody who has done it. Right. And I think that's it. So just being resourceful is one thing. And then on the other side of that is just being patient with the process. In 2018, the summer of 2018, we were looking and we were upside down. We were in the red. It was difficult to even pay the lease payment because we had lost so many students from mistakes that I made the prior year, right? Losing a lot of families, but I had to stay the course. And now this coming year, we're going to have more students than we've had in our whole 9 years. So stay in the course and being patient with the process, definitely.
It's a great lesson to learn patience.
I do have a question. So when this guy decided he was going to apply for like unemployment after like been gone 5 years,
yes,
did you go to his house and be like, "Hey, listen, I got all this to do. I'm in the red, and you gonna send me this letter? I'm in the red. I got students missing. And you gonna send me this letter?"
No, but what I did do is because they give you 10 days. It's a short window to respond, and I pulled his file and I gave all the data to support 2015. He hasn't worked for us since 2015, and I made sure I faxed it right back to make sure that. Because of course that counts against me as far as unemployment insurance. So it's little things like that. You're trying to put a ding on my unemployment insurance, and you haven't worked for us for 5 years. So yeah, I didn't go to his house, but I was.
Like I got all this to deal with. All this, you see, I'm going to show them all the mail that I have to answer, and like, you want to send me this little? This what you want me to spend my time on?
Wasting my time, yes, a waste of time.
Now, Kareem and Jamie, technically you're not employees of the empowerment perspective, so you cannot file for unemployment. You technically are still working for free as volunteer. I want to make that because I will pull up to your house. And Arienna, you also wrote. You're an author as well. Speak about the book that you have written. Actually, why did you even write it in the first?
That's a good question to me. So, I thought that the problem that I was seeing in the classroom, as far as apathy with parents, not caring about, or at least not seeming to care about, whether or not their kids did homework, whether or not they showed up on time, whether or not they studied for tests, just things like that. I thought that it was maybe a public school issue, and that once they were paying tuition, because at my school they pay tuition. I said, well, maybe once, maybe I'll see a difference in parents, and maybe they'll be more involved and more engaged in the process if they're paying me, not so much. Right. So I got, once again, and a lot of the things that I've done are born out of frustration. So once again, I'm becoming frustrated because I'm thinking, okay, I'm working really, really hard to make sure your kids are getting the best education possible. And the least you could do is partner with me. And so it started off as sort of a rant. It's called, the book is called Teach Your Own Kids, Schools Can't Do It Alone. And that was in 2017 that I started writing that. And it was basically a rant in the beginning of like, hey, you're your child's, my first chapter is you are your child's teacher. Right. But when I started giving it to my focus group to just kind of read through it for me, some parents, different parents that I'm connected to, they were like, you sound angry. Why are you so angry? Because I was. But I did, but that caused me to shift and change the tone of the book to more of a guide and a way to help build the bridge. Because I realized the more I talk to parents, they don't necessarily understand, some of them, what we need and how to work with us on behalf of their kids. And then sometimes we don't understand what they need from us. So the book, in essence, is an attempt to try to bridge the gap. There's one chapter where I say, this is what teachers expect from you. Something as simple as, if your baby is in kindergarten, check her book bag. There may be a note in there. There could be anything. Just check the book bag on a daily basis. So it's something as simple as that, all the way up to if your child comes home and says that Miss J said XYZ, call me and talk to me first before you go to the principal and say, my child said XYZ. So it's those little things that you think that somebody should know, right? Or they think that we should know how to handle certain things. But I think it's an attempt to kind of get the dialogue going and improve communication between the school community and the families.
Now, Jamie, I'm going to throw this question to you. And when you were talking, it kind of made me think about, like, we're in a service industry, technically, as educators, we're servers.
Yes.
And I think there's a part of the issue is that in any other service industry, like if I go to a restaurant, I pay money, you're supposed to serve me, and I'm paying for your service, right? I'm not supposed to do any work on the back end. And I think there's a lot of confusion, even though it's my kid, I still am paying this organization for them to learn soccer. Like it's always, I pay, you do the service type thing. And I guess, Jamie, do you think that could possibly be part of the issue outside of the fact that parents may not know how to help their kids, but they're just stuck in, I'm paying my taxes are paying your salary. You're supposed to teach my kid, and that's your job and your responsibility. Do you think that's an overwhelming mentality of parents today?
I think that it's interesting that you say that, because I think that right now, with us doing the virtual education that we're doing, I found that some students and some families have stepped right up and have gotten online and have done the work that they need to do. And some families expect you to call their house every single day and let you know what they've missed and what's expected of them and what's due by the end of the week. So this has really opened up my eyes in regards to who is stepping in and doing what they need to at home and who still expects us to be in their household with their children, even though we're not even in school right now.
I would have called that parent and like, listen, I'm gonna call you every single day and let you know. Agree? You think that part of the issue is this concept of service, and I'm paying you a service that you're supposed to provide for my children. That's your job. You teach.
It's well, I think when you say like service, I think of like that fondue place where though they would bring you like raw food and bring you like a fire and then bring you like melted cheese. I was never really a big fan of that. Like I'm not coming to the restaurant so I can cook my own food. I could have done that at home. But I think that in terms of education, we definitely need to have like a partnership. And I think that partnership, if it's not established early, or the parents are not familiar about the education process, now what happens is that we lose them. And when we call them, the only time we call them is when we got bad news. I'm not going to answer the phone. I'm going to swipe right to the left. I'm not accepting the call. No, I don't care how sick he is. You need to handle it, give him an aspirin or something, and put him on the bus. I'm not coming to get him. So I think that early, like we miss out with being able to build foundations with parents and get them directly involved in education. Because by the time they get to middle school, man, it's like only time you call me is when you got something bad to say. It's like one of your friends. The only time you call me is when you need something. Don't even call me. I don't even want to talk.
That is true. You also have another book out, correct?
I do. I released this one in this past October on my 40th birthday. It is totally unrelated to education in the sense that it is a book written for women. It's called Under Pressure, A Woman's Guide to Resisting the Urge to Quit. And I wrote that this past summer when my mom was given 2 weeks to live. So that one I released in 2017. 2019, I'm sorry, this past October.
Gotcha.
So you get mad and all of a sudden you just start writing books? Is that how you do it?
This one was more grief, more not wanting to sink into depression, wanting to create. Okay. So, but that's what I do. I noticed that, and that's that self-awareness. I didn't know this about myself. When I look back over the things that I've created from the school to the 2 books, it was all born out of pain.
Okay.
So pain can cause you to really, if you channel it, it can cause you to create light. So that's what I'm out about myself as well. Yeah.
Where the empowerment perspective came from. That's exactly what we're born out of.
Pain, right?
Absolutely. And realizing that there's things that you can't change, but you can change how you look at certain things.
Yeah.
And once you change your perspective and use it as a source of motivation and empowerment, then I think it actually, you'll be a lot farther in life, I believe. I think a lot of people obviously are hung up on things that they can't change and let that, swallow them in and put them in that box. But until you learn how to step outside of yourself and step outside of the situation and say, all right, what can I use from this? It's messed up.
Absolutely.
What can I use from this?
Yeah.
Where can people find your books?
Great question. teachyouroWnkid.com, teachyouroWnkid.com, and AriennaCraigJolla.com. So ArienneCraigJolla.com.
Awesome. We'll definitely put that up on the video as well. And you have a podcast, correct?
I do. I have 65 episodes of Teach Your Own Kid, and I put it on pause when my mom got sick. So it's been a minute. So I have a lot of archived episodes, and I'm in the process of deciding what I'm going to do as far as I want to merge and kind of I love the empowerment concept. And I think that all of those things can go under that umbrella. So that's what I'm in the process of revamping.
Awesome. So we want to switch gears a little bit on this podcast. We like to have fun near the end of it. So we have 2 segments that we talk about. And I know I kind of already know where Kareem's going to go with his. So I'm actually not going to start with his yet. So we have Jamie Roberts, who's our 2-foot assassin. So her segment is called All Things Little, and she talks about one thing little that she hates. So while she goes over that, Arianna, I want you to think about one thing that's little that you hate. So Jamie, the floor is yours.
Okay.
Try not to make it green.
I've already destroyed his self-esteem last night, so I'm good for today.
Listen, I have a closet full of self-esteem. I have rental space of self-esteem. So just know that you got a lot more work to do. You think you're gonna mess around with my self-esteem? I love me.
Okay. So small. I really, really dislike small lies because small lies turn into bigger lies, and they manifest into this huge thing that people try to cover up, when really, if you would have told the truth initially, then that small lie wouldn't have become this great big thing.
I have a problem now, Jamie, because in the previous episode we talked about telling someone their age, and you told a lie.
No, I didn't say I lied. I said, if you can't tell me, I'm not going to tell you. That's different than lying.
But you said, if I said like, say, 33, you said you would go with that. Yeah, I'm 33. That is a lie.
No, you said it, not me. You said it. Nope. If I say it, it's a lie. If you say it, I'm disagreeing with you. That's different.
Okay. Kareem, you look perplexed. What's the matter?
Well, I am perplexed. Because I think about the times when somebody wanted to look through my phone and they're like, "What's your passcode?" And I'm like, "I don't remember." So I don't know if that's like technically a lie if I don't know my passcode to open up my phone. See, look, if you look at the ladies look, they confused. Like, what you mean he doesn't know his password? It's confused. So I don't know.
I think he knows his password. He knows his password.
I'm gonna ride with you, Kareem, because they got that face recognition thing now.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Like, what's your passcode? I don't really know what it is right now. I forgot it. Yes.
Your face changed? What happened?
I'm just saying, like, we use a phone. I don't know if my phone's working right now. T-Mobile shut my phone off, so.
You're funny. All right, I'm with one thing little.
One thing little. I'm gonna have to go with cats.
Cats?
Cats.
Okay.
Oh. Meow.
What's wrong?
I'm sorry. What you say?
What's wrong with cats?
I had a bad experience growing up with cats. I grew up, like I said, in a poor neighborhood. It was actually a neighborhood that we were the ones who caused, I guess, the white flight. We moved into the neighborhood, but a lot of whites that lived in the neighborhood had cats. And those cats would sit on our porch and they wouldn't move. Like if I were walking up, they wouldn't move. And no. So I know it's a whole, it's layered. It's got a couple of layers to it. So I think I equate that experience of white flight neighborhood.
So you need to tell me these people were like, all right, we're gonna leave, but everybody in the neighborhood,
we're leaving our cats.
We're leaving cats. I
think that's what happened. I really think that's what happened. I never thought of it like that, but now that I think that's what they left their cats. So I don't like cats.
Everybody moved to the French Quarter and said, you know what, we're going to leave our cats behind. We're going to leave it right here for them. Since they won't move in our neighborhood, they can have all these cats.
Yes.
Funny. All right, you're on your mission.
So, okay, it's 2020. And again, I'm on a mission to build like a petty army. So, Are you petty? I mean, you got your own school. You've written 3-4 books. You got podcasts. Are you petty?
I think I am petty.
Okay. I think you're petty too. Anytime you take the time out to open up that one envelope from unemployment, you got all these other things. You got to work on the schedule for next year. You say, you know what? I want to see what this unemployment thing is all about. Now I'm going to. We're going to stop right now. I'm pretty sure you can call the secretary. Yes. You call the secretary and say, listen, go get me his employment file right now, because I know for a fact that He ain't worked here, and he's not getting any money. I don't care how messed up he is. You could have gave that man that $300. He said no, he ain't getting nothing.
No. Oh, you got me, because I was so petty on that one. I must say, I put my shoes on and I went to the school and got his file. That's how petty I was. Yes. So.
You facing a state audit, and you like, you know what? No, we're not doing this right now. No, I need to go and get this piece of paper because ain't no way he's gonna get $300 out of me right now.
Ain't no way. I wouldn't have been able to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have been able to sleep. So yes, I am petty.
That is awesome. Well, you're probably one of the few that actually agreed that they were petty. A lot of people always try to fight it, like I'm not petty. And hey,
yeah, I can definitely be.
I would have liked it if you just hired him back. That way he couldn't get any unemployment. Give his job back. Like, come on, no, we're gonna hire him back today.
Kareem, he has not worked in 5 years. I think he might need to kind of.
No, that's okay. You hire him, right, and then you fire him before the 90-day period is up, so he can't get any more unemployment.
The views and opinions of Kareem Petty Spence is not in the live retirement perspective group. We have to say this every podcast. But it's all good. Well, Arienna, we definitely thank you for your time. One more time, where can people find your book and information about the wonderful things that you're doing?
Sure, and I thank you so much for having me on. It was a pleasure talking to you all today. TeachYourOwnKid.com or AriennaCraigJolla.com.
Okay, and we like to always give our guests one of the last words of any words of advice, whether it be for a teacher, someone that's trying to open up their own school, or someone that wants to write their own book, or any last words that you want for the audience out there.
Definitely. I think that the most important thing is to do what you are passionate about, and keep in mind that no matter what happens, that your passion sometimes is going to outweigh the results. But if you stick with it, if you have staying power, then it's going to manifest. The rewards will come.
Yes. Jamie, any last word from the little people?
Just feeding off of what Arienna said, you can't always look for others to see what you're doing. No one's always going to point out the good of what you're doing. You have to do it for yourself and do it for your students.
Mr. Petty, any last words, sir?
Well, I'll say that pettiness doesn't happen overnight. Sometimes it's an accumulation of things that make you aware that, you know what, I really am petty, like denying somebody unemployment, and it's time to meet with in this store, pandemic, and she want to get that man $200 to go to the grocery store.
Yes, sir.
Profound words there. Audience, thanks for listening. Again, use this time wisely. We're always talking about doing a self-assessment. Try to find out what your gift is. Start living in your purpose. Define your why, because obviously your why, we keep preaching this, that your why is going to push you through the difficult times. It's going to make sure that you stay on the right course. But don't lie about it. Don't say that your why is your family when it really isn't, or your why is whatever, and it really isn't. Look at your behaviors, because your behaviors are going to tell you what your why is, and be honest with it. And do your self-assessment. Start living in your gift. Start living in your purpose, and start looking for lanes to put those your gift in. And just because it is your gift is not right for every situation. Make sure you're assessing that. Don't waste your gift on something that is not going to use your gift properly. Again, we wish you the best. Stay safe out there, but use this time wisely. And as always, stay empowered.